Hello and welcome to another special episode of the Offside Musings Podcast. My name is Okey Ndibe, and it's such a delight to welcome you on behalf of my co-host Emeka Onyagwa. Again, it's been a little while since we were last with you. My co-partner and I, my co-host and I have been doing quite a bit of traveling. I was in South Africa for almost 2 weeks and just came in a few days ago. Of course, there's a lot to cover. But what we want to focus on today, in today's episode, is the whole question of Mr. Bola Ahmed Tinubu's academic credentials, specifically the question of his attendance and graduation from Chicago State University. So it's going to be a quick, nippy, brisk conversation. We have a bunch of questions to raise. The case is in court, and but it raises some exciting questions which we want to explore in this episode. So welcome.
All right. So it's the question of what's happening in courts and why is it happening? Why does it matter? Why should it matter?
Yeah. Well, so this is my opening take. The Nigerian Constitution stipulates that you can run for the presidency of the country if you have a secondary school leaving certificate. That's all you need. You don't have to be a graduate to become Nigeria's president. Now, that's, some people may argue that that's not a good constitutional provision for a nation that should be in a hurry to develop. That such a nation should hold itself to perhaps a better and higher standard. But it is what it is, right? So anybody who runs for political office in Nigeria, whether you are running for governorship or for the House or for the Senate or for the presidency, all you need provide and all you need have is evidence that you went to a secondary school and that you graduated properly. And yet, Nigeria's history is replete with political aspirants who lied about having attended universities. Some of them actually lied that they acquired advanced degrees in universities, often abroad. Under scrutiny, those lies have really been exposed. One well-known case is that of Nnamdi Oba, who is, commonly called Dr. Andy Oba all over Nigeria, and who at one point gave the impression that he actually held an earned PhD. And then there is the legislator who at one point claimed that he'd been to the University of Toronto, and that turned out to be a lie. And there are numerous others. But we're speaking now of the Nigerian president, at least the person who up to now is maintained in office by pronouncement of INEC that he won the February 25, 2023 presidential election, and whose contested victory was validated by the Presidential Election Tribunal. So, as we all know, as our viewers hopefully know, former Vice President Atiku Abubakar of the PDP has approached a U.S. court to compel Chicago State University, which is the university that Bola Ahmed Tinubu claims that he attended and graduated from, to come forward with the credentials of this presumed president in Nigeria. Bola Ahmed Tinubu has expended a lot of effort and obviously a lot of money in trying to block the release of his degree, his ostensible degree from Chicago State University. We do know that from records that are available to the public, that apparently there was a Bola Tinubu who is female, who graduated from Chicago State University. So the question is, was Bola Ahmed Tinubu, did he transgender at some point? Did he identify as a woman when he was at Chicago State University? Or is something perhaps even more nefarious at play here? In other words, do we have a president in Aso Rock who told a bald-faced lie about his academic credentials? That's sort of my opening thought on that question. We can explore at some other point the question of what it means, you see, for a nation if the man who is at the helm of the affairs of that nation has credentials that either don't belong to him or credentials that are actually arrogated, stolen, in effect.
Yeah, it's a long saga, and it's been there for those who feel like it just started. It started maybe this week or last week or the last couple of months. Or those who feel like there hasn't been. There are two sides to people who feel maybe it just started the last week, last couple of weeks, last month, last couple of months, maybe quite recently. And there are those who feel like this has been there since the 90s, since Tinubu, since this dispensation. We're not talking about the first one back in 93 where he was a senator, where that wasn't an issue, because if memory serves me correctly, he didn't declare most of these things in 93. Maybe he had more fear because there was still the military was still a thing, which to me I've never seen as a completely bad thing, but neither here nor there. So in 99, he did start making all these declarations, and not just him, like you mentioned. There was Salisu Buhari. There were a whole bunch of other people who quietly, I think after the way Salisu Buhari was exposed, a lot of other people quietly slipped that out of their asset declaration forms. And as you said, the Constitution of Nigeria says, at least up until this year, said that you needed to have a school cert, a high school diploma. But up until this year, now I hear that you don't even need to have, according to some, let me say the way they say it tonight, esteemed personalities in Nigerian media. They say you don't even need one; you just need the equivalent. So, and I, when it comes to Nigeria, if they say that, I believe they will rule that way eventually, if it had to come down to that. So, that's all you need. But Tinubu has gone out and said he has said he had the Chicago State University, what is called in America a HSBCU, a historically black college and universities in America, a very impoverished one with a very shady history of, the list of shadiness of these things. And these schools are all over the place in America or the UK. You have very shady schools. It's a very shady school, but that notwithstanding, they took them to court, and it's in court right now. It was in court as well a year ago, and the ruling the judge gave is what released the documents, the actual authenticated documents that proved that the person that was issued and the person that went through that whole process is a woman, not Bola Tinubu.
Yeah.
But the Nigerian judiciary sitting down there decided that since it was the case in question that produced the document, the original document, was instituted by concerned citizens. The concerned citizens, is according to them, have no local standing to go obtain those documents. That only the parties to the case have. So Atiku Abubakar, having the financial resources, has gone to reobtain the case. And that is why it is in court now. So there's nothing new you're bound to learn from this. Reporters like David Uday has used it for an extensive piece, which if you want to read, it's always there. People have spoken about it, like on his radio show in the UK, George Galloway. And it's a very long list of people who have done extensive talking about it. But at the end of the day, the Nigerian judiciary and the Nigerian media, largely, almost entirely, just provide rulings that reach the conclusions they want without any logical path to it. Abracadabra, if you might say. Like the 12 hours at abracadabra that was given, which reached the conclusions they wanted, but they didn't have any logic, it didn't make any sense. Didn't make any sense. And it's Nigeria, so Nigerian lawyers have a reputation, have a way and a reputation of doing things where they maybe in the West, you'd say in America, you might use the term they credential themselves. I would rather use the term they credential themselves with force and without any room for they credential themselves with force without any room for dissent, and then they minimize any other human beings outside their created credentials, whether it's given or not, it doesn't matter. So you come up and you say logically it doesn't make any sense. They say no, I'm a lawyer. You don't know anything, so I'm the lawyer here. So you guys got to. So it's the trouble, and obviously when you go to the media, they're like, well, the Chicago State University said Bola Tinubu this thing. No, they went under oath, and they were asked by the judge, and the judge again said, and they said, hey, Bola Tinubu, yes, at another university, they said, is it this Bola Tinubu? They said they cannot. They said they cannot ascertain that
because it's a woman. So the question then is, and that's as you and I know, it's quite trendy, right? There's a new trend in identity where you are the gender that you identify as. So Tinubu could actually, in a sense, mitigate his moral exposure by just saying, hey, that early on, before it became a trend, that when he was a younger person, that when he was in university, that it pleased him to identify as a woman. And so that he walls through the classrooms at Chicago State University identifying as a woman, and therefore put in female as his gender. So that's one way of looking at it. But of course, quite apart from the joke value of what I just said, clearly, Nigerians who are discerning know the facts. Okay. Some people can forge things, they can pretend, they can bob and weave and sort of wiggle. In other words, we can all, if we choose, engage in self-deception. We can delude ourselves about about what the facts are, it seems clear that Bola Ahmed Tinubu is, for all practical purposes, a fiction foisted on Nigeria. Okay? It bears repeating that Bola Ahmed Tinubu, nobody can, uh, I don't think anybody can state with any confidence that this is his name, the name that he was given by his parents at birth. I don't think anybody can say that the age that he declared running for president corresponds with his real age, right? Nobody can vouch for the authenticity, the validity of his declarations with regard to his school records, including up to university. So, in a sense, then we have an absolute stranger, we have an interloper, we have somebody who has usurped numerous identities running Nigeria, and the ultimate usurpation may well be the usurpation of the very presidency, the presidential office of the nation, where this man, whose name we don't know, whose birthday we don't know, whose parentage we don't know, whose academic records remain a mystery, has become, through a mysterious electoral process, the president of Nigeria. Okay? So, in a sense, this is, how do I say it? This is a country that is profoundly troubled, right? This is a country that needs concerted action if it is to be rescued from its quagmire, all right? And yet we have the ultimate contradiction at the very apex of political power in our country. So what does it mean? For me, as a Nigerian, when you have a country governed by a president who is spending resources, financial, time, and so on, to keep hidden his academic records, which are already out in the public square, right? It's just that Atiku wants to obtain that information directly so that he can say, I am an interested party in the question of whether this man has lied or not. Okay? So otherwise that information is public. So when you have a country run by such a figure as Tinubu, what does it mean for the rest of the country? Because the president is the number one citizen, right? If the number one citizen is an unknown entity, he's not a non-entity, but he's an unknown entity. If the president of a country, Nigeria, lives a lie and has brought that lie to the very room of power, the center of power in the country, who is going to take Nigeria seriously, really, in anything that the country says? Because the international community knows what's going on. It's not like it's a secret that only Nigerians know. The US, the British, the Spanish, the Ghanaians, It's an open secret that we have a president who forged his academic credentials, who may have forged his age, may have forged his name, and so on. And this man is at the center, at the controlling lever of power in our country. I don't know. I mean, it's a kind of material, as a novelist, is a kind of material that if I invented in a novel, people would say to me, okay, no, you are stretching imagination to limits that are intolerable. People would not accept it. If I wrote a novel where I invent a president who has done exactly what Tinubu has done, people are going to say to me, hey, this is implausible. But this is the reality that we're living in Nigeria today. It's the kind of I don't know. So let me pause there, and hear your take.
Yeah, I mean, Nigeria is what it is. It's nothing unusual, also nothing unusual. It's not this kind of direction for a country is not. It's not a way countries haven't gone down. You have very mysterious figures that have ended up in place. Sometimes they end up there permanently, like in the case of North Korea. For instance, the Kim dynasty, they've ended up there permanently through the this thing of the cold through the different factions of the Cold War. Interacting with, where was it? The Chinese, the Russians, and America, and then I would say it's that kind of figure because people don't really till tomorrow know. Even with this iteration, people don't really know much about them still. But that's far flung. That's a different distance. But just the cast of human beings, with people. You have a country like Nigeria where you have a lot of people individually who are able to pull a great amount of weight in different parts of the world based on their personal skills and talents in free economies and free places. And you have a country like that where it keeps electing. It's on a path where it just keeps getting worse in terms of the kind of people they elect. So maybe that's why people feel it a lot more. But the system, country, the way things are, it's not on it. I'm trying to say it is the likely outcome. It is the outcome. If people get the leader they deserve, it is the outcome. People acquiesce to things. I saw a debate which I didn't take part in. I don't really bug myself, but a lot of people are like, they want democracy. Democracy is great. And it's like, what's the difference between this and that? I think I always say, I always tell them, look, people are fixated with democracy like it's a thing. And I've said, even the earliest accounts of people who practice democracy in history were skeptical and didn't even, the Socrates, the Platos, they didn't believe in democracy on that. They believed in community organizations to a large degree. So it's like, okay, when you have a democracy where it goes wrong on all levels, there's nothing about it that you generally, aside from the fact they're going to say, well, you're a democracy, cool. But there's nothing about it that you care about, that you see that works. If you live in the West, which is always a problem, you get back there like, well, this should work this way, this works this way, but nothing works that way. And there is no avenue for change. Even if you try to change or you talked too much about changing, there would be problems for you specifically now, way more than there was, in my opinion, during even a military regime. And I told them this, during the military regimes of the world, and people say, I say, look, even in Europe, where you had Franco for 40 years, General Franco for 40 years, after which the Spanish have gone on to reorganize themselves. During military regimes, at least you sit down and you say, this is not this is not what you want. That's why military people tend to want to become civilians and start, in Africa especially, and start wanting to confer legitimacy on their rule. But when you have a civilian system that seeks to hijack the system and everybody keeps keeping quiet, yes, in Nigeria, you haven't had somebody that has permanently abrogated power. However, Tinubu is close to that because from 1999, he has abrogated the largest economy in the country to himself as his own personal wealth, or fiefdom, as you like to, the word you like to use, right? I use a fiefdom anyway. He's abrogated that to himself. Now he's gotten to his local destination. And literally everybody in the country has been silenced, either bought off or silenced. And I mean, some of it, outrightly, you see people that have been, of cases of people that have been bought off. But some of it, you could just look at it and deduce the reality of it. You see TV stations that maybe were, or news outlets that maybe were sort of on the fence or trying to act like independent brokers. Now they act like, this is, if you don't like Tinubu, then something is wrong with you. There's no grounds for anything about Tinubu. And I'm not saying that George Galloway, that has a very a big platform in the UK, came out on his own program as well and talked about how he has been threatened to keep his mouth shut after they tried to offer him money. And I believe him, because that's the modus operandi of these guys, right? So I believe him is the modus operandi. So when people talk about these things, the Chicago State University has had numerous unexplained donations. That's the beauty of some of these public enterprises in America. You can't hide it. Unlike Nigeria, you can't just, in Nigerian society generally, top to bottom, has been for the last 30 years where wealth is just generally worshipped. Wealth is generally worshipped, is not explained. Nothing is explained. Whether it's in the intellectual space, Nigerian intellectuals don't explain anything. They just credential themselves, or I just say violently suppress you with their credentials. So there's nothing explained in the country. I mean, the people, if you ever wanted to bring it back to America, people have all kinds of but American intellectuals only run universities, which maybe now produce a lot of questionable minds. But Nigeria just produces questionable people from top to bottom, and it keeps getting to this direction. You can keep having these situations where it's wild. These guys don't care. They were confirming the CBN governor today, or was it yesterday? Whichever one, the CBN appointees. Meanwhile, the former guy is in detention. Meanwhile, as we knew of it prior to this point, the CBN governor can only be appointed by the president and approved by the Senate. Same thing, only the Senate can remove the CBN governor before the expiration of his or her term. But apparently, the law has changed overnight without him. So, and the people here are not even talking about it, and maybe for their own personal reasons, I don't know, but it is a situation.
Yeah, I mean, of course, in a sense, right? The extra constitutional developments that are rife in Nigeria, right? Not just under Tinubu, but seem to have accelerated under Tinubu, are not a surprise at all, right? Once you have the kind of absurdity, my mentor, Ngugi wa Thiong'o, the great Kenyan novelist, has this term that he uses in referring to the fact that African people now produce almost their most consequential knowledge in colonial languages, and that the knowledge that is embedded in indigenous languages is somewhat marginalized and sort of is seen as nominal. So Ngugi speaks about um, what he calls, what's the phrase he uses? He says it is um, uh, abnormal. Oh my gosh, what's the phrase that Ngugi uses again? Um, he speaks about he speaks about normalized abnormalities. That's the thing, right? Normalized abnormalities. So in the particular relation of language, what he's saying is that any people, should think their best thoughts and express themselves in poetry and in fiction and in philosophy in their indigenous language. That should be the normative order, right? That should be the normal thing. But that in Africa you find a reign of English and French and other colonial subjects, and that these are languages. Sorry, and that these are the languages that now are held up as the epitome of knowledge production. So, but to relate that phrase, normalize abnormality, when you have the president of a country who epitomizes falsehood, deception, fraud at every level, right? To the point of his name, to the point of his academic credentials, to the point of his date of birth, and so on. When you have that kind of situation and it's accepted, it's normalized, then everything else follows in that spirit. If a man would declare himself as a candidate for the presidency of our country, declare that he's not just a candidate, but it was his turn to become president, and openly use thousands of dollars, which got handed to delegates of his party to buy the party nomination. Okay. At a time when he could hardly hold up the flag that his party gave him, when he appeared to be in really abysmal health, right? And then proceed to spurn every invitation to engage other major presidential candidates in a debate. When he ran off to the UK and went to Chatham House and could not even take questions, simple questions that he was asked, but instead began to parcel out the questions to members of his delegation. And yet, somehow, this man who hardly campaigned, all right, is declared the winner of a controversial contest where people know that states that he lost were awarded to him. Okay. Where the man lost Lagos in a very grand way, but he had to do a lot of rigging in order to keep his defeat respectable. When we accept all of this and we accept that this man is now presiding over the affairs of the country, then everything is up for grabs. This same man can decide that the Nigerian constitution talk about Obasanjo's failed attempt for a third term. If Tinubu's health holds up, Tinubu would simply, he's the kind of person who would will that it's his turn to do a third term in Nigeria, and Nigerians will rationalize it. The same way that people are out there today on social media, on television, in newspapers, and in different fora, justifying something that is indefensible. Okay? So when you point out that this man has credentials that don't hold up, people then remind you that all he needs constitutionally is a school sat. So the question becomes, why didn't he then declare that he had a school sat? And that's it. And the question is, does he have a school sat? Even. Okay, so even if you ask that question, and where did he obtain his school sat, and so on. So nothing surprises me at all when you find the acceptance of the absurdity that is Tinubu's person. Okay, I mean, it's just how do you say it? I'm not sure that we're going to find a parallel. You spoke about the North Korean dictatorship, right? But yes, there are certain unique geopolitical forces that produce that regime, right?
Mhm.
And they enforce their power through just plenary use of military force to bring any even suspected opposition brutally to heel, right? But Nigeria presumes itself to be a democracy. And as you said, what's the content of this democracy? Okay. Does it make sense? The resources that a tiny percentage of Nigerian politicians, as president, National Assembly governors, state assemblies, local government chairmen, and their councillors, the amount of resources that they command for themselves and they consume is indefensible. And not only is it indefensible, it cannot be sustained ultimately. And I think that that's particularly what young people sensed in the movement that propelled Peter Obi to a spectacular performance in the last elections. The young people saw that unless things turned around, and that they forced a reconsideration of the direction of the country, that they will have no country to call their own, and so that it will be to Japa or maybe I don't know, maybe turn to lives as pastors, lives as scam artists, whatever it is, because the space called Nigeria today is only it's hope. I was in South Africa and somebody was saying to me, "Are you hopeful about Nigeria?" And I say, "I'm always hopeful." I said the reason I'm hopeful is that hope is a decision from one's heart. It's like you say, I love somebody who is not deserving of being loved, but you give, love. So I say hope. I'm hopeful. That I said, if you had asked, was I optimistic about Nigeria, the answer would be a quick no. Because optimism must be based on certain clear indices, certain criteria or factors that would then sustain your optimism. But hope, you can say, it's like faith. We don't have to be able to mathematically establish a proof of God for us to say, I believe in God, right? So it's a matter of faith. So it's the same way I have hope for Nigeria, precisely because we don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. But somehow I feel confident that the Supreme Court may well toe the same line as the appellate justices who gave that marathon judgment an exercise in absurdity. The Supreme Court may well come down and give a version of the same kind of illogic, okay, or the twisting of logic. In fact, I fully expect them to do that. But I think that there is something within Nigeria that could explode in a heartbeat. And so that everybody is worried of the consequences of the actions that they are taking. Because if you look at it objectively, Nigeria is an uncharted waters. It's in a very uncharted place in its history. Tragic as that history has been, appalling and dispiriting as the Nigerian story has been so far, we're in a particular juncture that, how bad is Tinubu? The phenomenon of Tinubu. The fact that some Nigerians are already saying that Buhari, that they had a good time during Buhari. That tells you something. We thought that nobody could be worse than Buhari. In fact, some people were saying, "Now I'll have a goat take over for Buhari." Okay, and the goat will not do worse. It's like as if Tinubu said, "Hold my mug of coffee, I dey come."
Yeah, well, it is the current saga. It is the ongoing thing. It is the interesting thing. Like, Tinubu is not doing anything that is not unexpected. If you are honest, most people are either falling in line at this point in time or are getting chased around. I think they've already started chasing David Hunde from. I think he's already come out chasing from Ghana. So there's that are not falling in line, are getting chased around, and even those that sound like, there are people who are there, whether online or this thing. They have the army. They are very adept to looking at who is speaking up and all those kind of things. So it's an interesting scenario. The thing is that where Nigeria is, like you said, every case is new. Every day is new. Yesterday is not today. Neither will it be tomorrow. You never can tell. Is a new, completely different, completely new. People are dealing with it, but it's not like they're sitting down and it is very. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. It's very interesting. Who knows where it ends up? Who knows where it doesn't end up? They came out and even something as simple as in the last, when did he get sworn in? He got sworn in May 29th, right? So today's September. Something as simple as every single thing he has said that hasn't been true from the get-go. I've forgotten there was a person that came out and listed the 10 things, and I thought there would be a robust conversation or robust or what else, media outlets, print, whichever one. There's mostly silence. I've forgotten it's actually because it's a prominent politician, and he said it on, I think, Channels TV or something, which is another prominent station in Nigeria. Then Nigerian wise is prominent. Channels Arise, Nigerian wise are prominent. So he comes out and says the 10 things that Tinubu has lied, not misled, lied. And people just paid lip service and moved on.
It's like when he came for the United Nations General Assembly and said he was the first Nigerian to to ring the bell on Wall Street,
Mhm.
stock market. Something that is demonstrably false. And the fact that also, and I think that the painful thing is the kind of mentality that informed that lie. Because this is something that they have brought some children really to go, you know, I mean, inconsequential people, some young people have done it, right? Sports people have done it, ministers, athletes, and so on. So it's not like it's something that is quite so rare, right? That you needed to lie about and say, "Oh, I'm the first Nigerian," you know. And the fact that he thought that that his handlers thought that this was a big deal, okay, to brag about it was really sad. Um, but for me, of all the you talked about people being bought, being chased around, and so on. Um, what I find particularly dispiriting, because a Tinubu is an immoral, like many politicians, he's absolutely immoral, right? For him, power is the end, and he's willing to uh, adopt any means to get it, and to get a lot of it, and to exercise it in a very singular way. But it is to follow ostensible Nigerian intellectuals who are online every day, really investing their entire education in defending something that is clearly absurd. So I really don't know how people find that steam to do this, where somebody would suddenly, because it's one thing to say, listen, I believe that um, Tinubu has a questionable degree, okay, but since and I really condemn the fact that he lied about it. But since the Constitution says all you need is a school cert, I think we should just let it go. It's not consequential. He should just carry on with the business of running the nation. So at least you tell yourself the truth, right? But that people are twisting in the air, in the wind, um, trying to argue that there is no questions to be raised. There are no questions to be raised about a man's credentials when, the record we have is that credentials belong to a woman, you know, and the fact that a man has consistently lied about or has not told a straight story about any biographical details, okay? And that there are people who are online defending this, either in the name of being APC or belonging to the same ethnicity as the president or the vice president, or benefiting in some way from the political arrangements. It almost, because I expect very little in terms of moral conduct from politicians, and especially politicians of the ilk of Tinubu. But when I see people who, on the one hand, profess to want a better Nigeria, and they don't see the profound contradiction in that desire in upholding or defending all kinds of travesty. It's disillusioning for me. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's here with that. Yeah, I think his best hits have been pretty interesting. starting from a removed fuel subsidy,
Mm-hmm.
which it turns out they haven't removed fuel subsidy. The government is still paying for subsidy at this point in time. To
and you say, what is the point, really? It's like you remove fuel subsidy, you announce the removal of fuel subsidy, then it turns out, that there is some kind of not quite, okay? And meanwhile, the cost of fuel has risen to unsupportable levels and they're not coming down, okay? You let the Naira float, okay? And then you bring in some money to shore up the Naira as it's falling precipitously. Nobody knows what has happened to that money because the Naira continues to fall precipitously. So it's almost as if there is, by design, a program to quicken and accelerate the destruction of this edifice that is already wobbly.
Yeah, well, for those who don't understand, Nigeria is to subsidize for, which is kind of interesting because you have a country that produces oil in commercial quantities, globally commercial quantities, where they are able to sell, and which is the only source of income really for Nigeria, that and remittances. Nigeria's foreign direct investments consist of foreign remittances back to the country at about 20%. The rest of the country is run by oil.
Mm-hmm.
And it can't even refine the oil products it uses in the country. So down to fuel or gas, as we call it in the US, oil, cars, you name it, it can't. So it has to import everything. And the importation of it is subsidized, which is another which literally eats up about 80% of the budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's subsidized to the point of absolute corruption.
It's been a long-running scam.
Yeah, so it's subsidized to the point of absolute corruption, which it's everybody agrees it needs to be removed.
Mm-hmm.
But you need to, since it's been there since after the Nigerian Civil War in the 1970s, and it was done essentially to help stifle what they felt was the mainstay of the Eastern region. Let me put it that way. Is a big difference. The Eastern region at that point in time. So there is a fantastic book. Oh, shit, there are a lot of fantastic books. But anyway, I guess that's not one. The book I'm actually thinking about is Intellectuals and Society by Thomas Sowell, where he references Nigeria and federal character. Phenomenal, man. He references Nigeria and federal character in the same under the this thing of affirmative action,
mm-hmm.
positive discrimination in India and Bangladesh.
Mm.
Anyway, so these were part of the policies that came up, the positive discrimination or affirmative action or whatever you choose to call it. They're all the same thing essentially. These were part of the largesses that came up, and then it was manageable. But as the country grew and production goes down, it's even less manageable. Even the production was up, it's always been at the detriment to the country, the economy, and the people of Nigeria. We're not even talking about the structure of oil and oil exploration in Nigeria, which is meant to exploit the regions where the oil is actually from, and which also comes out from 1970 as well, from the 1970s as well. So that's even another that's another kind of worms as well, where government becomes the sole owner of land, kind of like a monarchy. The Nigerian government kind of owns all the land. Depends on which way you are. State governments now in this iteration have more say have almost total control in their state in terms of land, and the federal government largely has total control in terms of resources in the country. So you as a citizen can be dispossessed of your rights to your land tomorrow by a state governor with little or no recourse, and you as a community can be and will be dispossessed of your rights to your natural resources by the federal government with no recourse either. And all that was done under the 70s listing of all these programs that they decided to institute back then. So you have this thing that comes out of it, and it's been there, it's been a drain on the resources. It can't sustain itself anymore. I think at this point, it's like, by some accounts, it's even 100% of the national budget goes towards oil subsidization in the country for a resource that is extracted from the soil of Nigeria, which you should have the refineries there. Anyway, so it's
have refineries, obviously, which were
the four of them that don't work,
which were deliberately sabotaged.
Yeah, so you have the situation where you needed to take it out, but you needed to now take it out with policies that took into account 40-something years of bringing that sector of the economy, which carries the rest of Nigeria, into light. Was not going to be an overnight thing, and it did it overnight. Doesn't work. They float the naira as well, which means they let the Nigerian currency to obtain its value purely from international trading. That only works when you have something to back up your currency. Yeah. When you have nothing to back up your currency. Simple economic philosophy. You have production, you have international interests, you have military interests that back it up, like America. You need something to back up your currency. You have nothing to back up your currency, you're going to have problems. Predictable, easily predictable. You don't need predictable. You don't need to this thing. But Nigerians were convinced that free market. Actually, I was watching the guy. People keep tweeting the guy that does a business segment on Arise. That those things don't affect Nigeria. I was like, all right, cool. And now the currency has depreciated by more than I think 150%. I think since Tinubu came in, somewhere around that. By the official rate alone, it's about 150, 130, 150, it's 120 to 150%. The unofficial rate too is about 110, 100 at this time. So it's gone overnight, and goods have gone overnight over 350%. In addition to the global stresses that have been stressing things all over the country, including all over the world, including in America. So you have a situation where you have over 400% increase in day-to-day living overnight in Nigeria.
But income, is stagnant.
Income is not going up. Income is not even being paid in some lot of cases.
Yeah, so, precisely.
It's you can imagine how people are waking up to feel. You go day to day what you have to do. You're going back to school. Let's imagine maybe last term, which almost everybody in Nigeria that matters. From top to bottom, doesn't matter, from grade school, from kindergarten level or pre-kindergarten, you have to pay for it all the way to high school. If you love your kid and you have any kind of resources, everybody does that now. So imagine if a couple months ago you paid maybe the equivalent of, maybe let's say throughout the figure you paid $300, and by even the most modest increases in school fees, you now have to pay the next school year. You have to pay about $550, $500. That's modest ones. Some of them have gone a full 100%. You have to go from $300. And this is just a figure. I don't think the schools in my neighborhood, like where I live, the monthly distance, that's even monthly distance. I'm talking of even yearly in this case, but the monthly distance is even more than that, right? So it's just I'm just saying that so people can understand. Let's say you're paying $2,000 for 2 kids, right? And then overnight now you have to pay next year. You have to pay $4,000 a month for 2 kids, twice what you're paying, and that's just on one angle. So you have to now, so imagine, and then that goes all the way down to food, to transportation, to everything. It's an overnight. This thing to fuel has gone up over 300%, and that's why they're now paying this thing again. So diesel has gone up in a big product that's used to use the generator, which is generating this thing in Nigeria is still a big distance, even though inverters and solar energy has made a big appliances in a home, which is definitely the best thing for Nigeria. It's made a big dent, but by and large, the majority of Nigerians still, by and large, use um, um, uh, generate water supply in a lot of cases when you don't even have an inverter and all these kind of things. So you're looking at a massive bill just to, you know, again, you live in America or you live in the UK, income by and large is
Depends.
expected. Might not always be the case, but it's expected to, at the
Mm-hmm.
very minimum, cover your living expenses. In Nigeria, your income has not been expected to cover your living expenses in decades to start with, and your other sources of income. Sometimes, a lot of times, legitimate sources of income has now been stretched. So imagine a situation where your other sources of income is to have legitimate sources of income, is to have a business where you have residual income people have that were that were have been eroded in the last 10 years, and the last 4 months is going to this stage. So you have a situation. Uh,
Mm-hmm. With somebody who is an executive of a government um, board in Anambra State, and he told me that he's told his staff to just basically stay home because he said he has some staff who come from their hometowns, and that to come from their hometowns to work and back would take three times what their salary is supposed to be. So he said, how that there is no way he can insist that they come to work. So it says occasionally he has them come in, but otherwise, so you have a country where if you recognize that that kind of allowance is being made all over the country, or people are simply unable to come, because if it costs me $500 to go to work someplace, and what I get in salary is $400 a month, then it means you have to dig into your pocket, find $100 to supplement just to go to work, and that's a situation that a lot of people in Nigeria. So Tinubu has been a disaster, and that, in a sense, because Buhari was a disaster, as was Jonathan. So to call Tinubu a disaster is to put things in the mildest of terms. This man um, has been a deadly. What's that phrase that that Sam Harris used? Um, uh, Almost a cosmic threat. A cosmic. Yeah, I forget. I think Sam Harris was talking about Trump and the kind of threat that he felt that Trump represented, and he used something like, almost like a meteorite, coming. So Tinubu is a meteorite that is really devastating the lives and devaluing the humanity of Nigerians every day. And the irony that it is somebody, and in a sense, the appropriateness that it is somebody who is uh, who is a fictive, who is a construct, who is a fictional character, uh, a self-invented Kafkaesque character who is bringing this level of perdition to the country. It's in a lot of ways fitting. I mean, as a writer, Tinubu is exceedingly um, fascinating figure, for me. But as a Nigerian citizen, I feel nothing but profound embarrassment and profound shame that this is um, that Nigerians, if Nigerians were asked a simple question. Account for your president. Who is he? What is his name? When was he born? And you said to them, go online and, scour around for that information. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody can say with confidence that this is his name, this is his date of birth, this is where he went to elementary school, to secondary school, to university, and these were his parents, and so on and so forth. And anyway, it's I think we should leave it there. We should leave it there. It leaves something will give somehow. I don't see I don't see how this goes on. If Nigerians are able to take a full term of Tinubu as president, then Nigerians would, in my mind, have established an unbreakable war record in resilience and in the survival instinct. But I don't see that anybody can survive the disaster, the cosmic disaster called Tinubu.